Okay, sounds awesome.
Okay, so we're going to have a conversation about radical acceptance. So, just kind of the whole idea of working with life as it is rather than getting resentful and resisting the circumstances of our life and getting bitter about it and everything else. So, the first thing we're going to do is a little bit of a self assessment. Okay, so you can just write down your answers. For each statement, you write down a score between 1 and 10. 10 means you totally agree with the statement, 5 means you half agree, and 0 means you disagree completely. Okay, so we're going to go through 6 questions, and that's going to give you a number to understand how relevant this is to you in your life. Okay, so statement number 1: something in my life isn't going the way it's supposed to. Something in my life isn't going the way it's supposed to. So write down 10 if you totally agree, 5 if you half agree, 0 if you disagree completely. Okay? Number 2, life should be easier than it is. Life should be easier than it is. 10 if you totally agree, 0 if you disagree completely, and then somewhere in between. Okay, number 3, I'd be better off without some of my problems. I'd be better off without some of my problems. Once again, 1 to 10 score. Number 4, life should be more fair than it is. Life should be more fair than it is. 1 to 10 score. Number 5, some things in life are completely bad. Some things in life are completely bad. 1 to 10. And then number 6 is life should be less chaotic. Life should be less chaotic. 1 to 10. Okay, now add them all up and you've got a score out of 60. Now, whatever the score is, just know that it's a benchmark for where you're at today, or if anyone watches the video, it's a benchmark for where they're at today. And chances are, people aren't properly trained on how to harmonize with life as it is. So you're innocent, probably wherever this is, because you just probably haven't been properly trained on this. When people know better, they do better. So we don't necessarily get the skill development on how to create harmonious attitudes with everything that is in our life. So now the higher the score, the more you embody the attitude that life should be different or easier than it is. So that means that the higher the score you have, the more you are at disharmony with reality. And that disharmony can be a great source of our stress, frustration, and mental disturbance. The combined score for all of these should be 0. Okay, now that might come in as a shock, but it should be 0 because that's the way life really is. And often we're taking our preferences for reality and we make them our expectations for reality, that life should be this way because I would prefer it was. But the bigger the gap between how life is and how we think it should be, the more stressed out we get. And as Sri Yukteswar says, is the whole world going to change for you? Good luck trying. Change yourself instead. Okay. So
100%.
Any thoughts on the quiz at all?
It's solid. Like, I mean, there's some of them I was like stumbling. I'm like, do I agree with this? Obviously, like you can feel is kind of kicking in, but you know the truth inevitably, like internally, hopefully.
Yeah, we want to be brutally honest with ourselves. Even if we know it's not a good idea, we know some attitudes still get us. And that just means that we need to give ourselves, we need to further reinforce the empowering replacement attitude.
Okay.
Right? So the key is, if you want to be in control in life, you have to accept life as it is. You have to meet life as it is by cultivating extraordinary acceptance. Because that which cannot be cured must be endured. So we have to work with things the way they are instead of getting worked up that they aren't the way we want them to be. And this is a skill and you can learn it just like anything else. few people actually commit themselves to this skill development, but it leads to tremendous payoffs in life. Now, radical acceptance and extraordinary acceptance, it doesn't mean that you try to make yourself comfortable with injustices or unfavorable situations. It just means that we accept these things happen so that we are then in the best state to take progressive action. Okay? We want to take this radical acceptance and progress it into progressive action. We want to transition it and do something progressive. Okay? So, just a general question. Why should we surrender our resistance to life circumstances? Why should we practice surrendering our preferences that things be easier or different? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that when you don't surrender, there's greater suffering in that as opposed to like empowerment, right? Like I feel like when you don't surrender, you're constantly trying to like resist, hold on to, and I feel like it's like a tighter grip, and it's probably you're worse off in that sense. But if you were to kind of like loosen your grip and just accept things as they are, you'd be a little bit more solution focused, right? Like, how can we make this better?
You're right. We would actually have something called patience. This is all about developing the virtue of patience, right?
Right.
Because we want things in our time, not necessarily the right time. So, yeah, if we want to be happy, this will help us. Accepting reality helps us better handle and enjoy reality. If you want to help people, this will help us, because it helps us maintain a good state of being, a resourceful state of being, good moods.
Right.
Because life has these inevitable experiences that are going to disturb us, right? So, and life is not a problem. We just make it a problem by not accepting it as it is. Our judgments about the world are the source of our distress. So when we create opinions about how things should and shouldn't be, we'll always be disturbed. But when we let the disturbing energy dominate our life, and that can hurt our physical health because our psychology becomes our physiology and we get more stressed out. So, but the good news is, as Wayne Dyer says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So there is hope on this one. So what we want to do is we want to go after next. We want to create a really compelling argument on why life should not be any easier than it is. So I want you to pretend like, you're a lawyer and you have to try to win the case. Okay. But we're going to be teammates. Okay. So when you're done, you can say, high five, you're in. And then I'll round it out with some of my answers, but you get to go first. Okay. So even if you just come up with one little thing, that's fine. We're teammates. Don't worry about it. But we need to convince ourselves that it is a good idea that we have this discomforts in our life. Okay. So that we can be more accepting of it. All right. So why should life not be any easier than it is? What are your thoughts?
I think the discomfort, it enables growth, like self-development.
Yes.
That's going to be, yeah.
Absolutely.
Your turn.
Okay, perfect. You're right. I mean, most of our growth happens outside the comfort zone. The struggle itself gives us the strength needed for our development. Our tests make us stronger. Just like a workout in the gym, it burns, but it makes us stronger. If life were really easy, we'd all just be spiritual cream puffs. We never really realize our potential now, would we? And what are we here for? To pretend to be less than we are, or to grow and self-realize into our potential? So the other thing is, when things are uncomfortable, difficulties compel us to spend more time examining and evaluating things, which may prompt new perspectives and new possibilities for our life. So the difficulties bring attention to the stuff inside of us that needs fixing. And because these difficulties are uncomfortable, it compels us to take action. It motivates us, which does us the favor of making it painful to procrastinate. It has to be uncomfortable for us, for our benefit, right? To get our attention. It's uncomfortable for our benefit, you know? So, and if life were really easy and we could predict and control everything, how long would it take before you get bored to tears? You know, it's fun for a week, but then, you know, part of this novelty of the challenges and surprises in life is that it keeps us engaged. Like, we wouldn't really like a movie that doesn't have any conflict, and it's just a family that like sits and has dinner and everything is always nice, and then they go to work and everything goes swell, and then they go home and movie over. Like, people would want their money back, right? Like, so in the human story, we realize, like, in movies, it's the conflict that keeps us interested and engaged. And as much as we don't want to admit it, it is those kinds of things that keep us engaged in our lives, right?
This is true.
So, okay. Do you think we came up with, as a legal team here, do you think we came up with a good case?
It's, yeah, pretty solid. I feel like another like point to add in is that like sometimes like the darker moments help brighten like the brighter moments. Like, so just let's say going from nothing to having something, or going from like extreme conflict, it may help you experience happiness to a greater degree.
Yes, that's a great segue into the next big argument we have to make. And I want you to pretend like we're on a game show.
Okay.
It's like a debate game show, and if we win, we get the $1 million. Okay. So, and the reason I say this is because the reason we get stuck into some of these disempowering attitudes is because some part of us still thinks it's a good idea to think the way we do. And so we have to really come up with these compelling counter arguments, and then we have to get them memorized, ideally, because if it's memorized, it's in our subconscious. We can't just entertain them today and expect that everything's going to be better in future. That's like painting over dirt. We just need to get it into our psyche and know it in the bones and assimilate it in our atoms. Okay.
Like making these things like visible, or like even going over them like daily, would help ingrain that a little bit.
Oh, yeah. And we'll get to that. I mean, when we do the wrap up, we're going to go into, let's handpick whatever reminders might be most relevant to us.
Okay.
And then we'll be like, okay, what are the reminders that are going to help me be at peace with life? And then if I'm at peace, I'm going to then be in a better state to do the things I need to do in this life, right? So we don't want to get stuck in complacency, you know, but
for sure.
You know, because it's like there's work we need to do. Like, if a baby is crying, you know, you don't just sit there and be complacent with where you're at. There's people that need help. There's action we need to take in life. So after we accept it, we still want to move forward progressively with whatever we're called to do. So for the $1 million, we have to debate, why should life not be any different than it is? Why should it not be any different than it is? You can go first, and then I'll try to balance it out. That's how we go. You're first up for our team. Less pressure, because then I just try to fill in gaps.
Well, I would say things kind of figured themselves out before, so why wouldn't they now? So even just thinking back to like past conflicts and how they resolved and maybe turned into something greater that you didn't imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have anything to chime in on that one?
Oh yeah, I mean, I can go ahead right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can say, you know, like a lot of times we want life to be different because we think some element of it is unfair, but we tend to demand fairness in life only when it suits our preferences. You know, it's a good thing life is not fair, because, you know, we can't repay all the rewards and benefits we've received from the universe, from the trees, the sun, the fish, the bees, and everything they've done for us. You know, we all came into this world naked with nothing. Everything else we've acquired is just profit and bonus, right? Like, we've already got more than our fair share. It's not like we brought a lot into this, you know, and, you know, we already have many environmental advantages, many genetic advantages that other people don't have, many family advantages that other people don't have. We can never repay the plants and animals in nature for all the sacrifices they have made for us. There's about there's, I think, billions of people that live off of less than $6 a day. That's not really fair either. Can we ever really repay back all the people that have loved us and lifted us and supported us? Right. So, the key thing to acknowledge here is that it's a good thing life isn't fair, because if we're to be really honest, we've all kind of received even more than we could possibly be grateful for. So that's one reason that maybe it shouldn't be different. Another thing is that the unfairness of life gives the opportunity for people to love and contribute in a meaningful way. It's because of these discrepancies in resources and these variations in our abilities and understandings that we have the ability to express love in this life by reaching down and helping those who might be less fortunate or less capable, right? If everything were equal across the board, it'd be rather boring. Like, the inequalities of life pave the way for profound acts of love in life.
I never looked that way. Yeah, that's a really big one.
I'd say that, we resist reality only because of a limited understanding we have. We think events are static and isolated, and so we have a hard time accepting them, even though everything is connected in complex ways that are beyond our everyday attention. And in this kind of thinking, it's easier to accept the unpleasantness of life, and that out of bad things, some good things can happen. Like, broken promises may have a time and a place. I'm not a fan of broken promises, but I know that and it might seem unfair, but some promises maybe should have never been made, right? Some promises are broken, and there's dark gifts that comes out of it. A greater understanding, new growth, new people, new learning, and new experiences, right? Even sickness and disease and aches and pains can serve a functional purpose. It can bond us in our mutually shared struggle. It can give a forum for the expression of love and compassion. To view it as an entirely bad thing is to look at it through only a narrow slit of reality. Sickness itself can be a very powerful teacher, providing us with the necessary experiences to live life on a higher level, to reprioritize our values and what matters to us in life, right? So even those people that don't like us and respect us, even when we're good to them, even when we're kind to them, they serve a functional purpose too. They can give us motivational drive to be better. If people never challenged you and never doubted you or critiqued you, would you ever be motivated to rise above? Right? So when you think about it, like, part of what happens here is that these people can bring attention to parts of us that need fixing, right? And it might be our judgment that they shouldn't be the way they are right now.
Right.
But when we're judging, there's one thing we're not doing. We're not unconditionally loving and accepting.
Yeah.
Right. And we tend to judge because of our own impatience. That's really what it is. It's like, I don't want to have the patience for this, but we all go through these inescapable stages of development in which, like struggling, like people who are clumsy at dancing, we step on each other's feet, and we've done it to other people as well. It's like, there are so many on this planet. It's like a spiritual school, but there's so many different grade levels that different souls are at, but we're all mixed in together. So, gratefully, there's those who are more advanced than us that we learn and benefit from. And then there's those less advanced who step on our feet sometimes, right? So that we can learn to go with the flow a little bit better in life. So, all right, do you have any other ones to add to why should life not be different than it is?
Well, I think even in terms of like scaling fairness, I feel like that's very like subjective. Like everybody's scale of what is fair would be different, right?
Oh, yeah.
So how can that be like one standard scale, you know?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's because that's where do you judge, right? How do you measure that? It's impossible. It's our own arrogance that we make these claims, right? So
But
you're absolutely right about that.
you brought up a lot of like valid points in terms of like often in circumstances, environments, or even with individuals who challenge us. I feel like that sometimes the easier thing to do is just maybe like look at them and say like there's something wrong with them, as opposed to saying like, hey, like what's this drawing in me, you know, like what am I noticing? Maybe there's something in me that needs improving and such. So that was a really compelling one.
Yeah, and also, maybe somebody humiliates you, okay? And you can be grateful for the humiliation because it keeps us humble.
Right.
Because nothing is stinkier than having a big stinky ego, right?
Yeah.
Like when somebody's really conceited, and it could happen to us as long as we are in a body, it could happen to us, right? So we have to be humble enough to admit it could happen. So when we're getting humiliated left, right, and center, or unfairly negatively judged and everything else, it keeps us humble. We don't have it all figured out yet, you know?
Right.
So that can definitely be a perspective that can be liberating. And the other one that I like that you hinted at, that segued us into is it's kind of like it's the stuff we don't like about life that gives us the actual capacity to enjoy the things we do like about life. You can't appreciate the good, wise, caring, loving people in your life if you didn't have experiences with completely cruel, mean, and incompetent people, because then it is just so refreshing when you find the good people to be with, right? It's like, oh, you can't appreciate without mean people, we can't really appreciate the nice people as much. Without untrustworthy people who betray us, we wouldn't really appreciate those loyal, trustworthy people as much, right? And the suffering and experiences we all go through, that's a setup for an even sweeter salvation. So a lot of this stuff actually primes us so that we have the capacity for an even greater enjoyment. We don't realize that the bad stuff is actually a setup, so. And then the other thing is we always have a choice in how we respond. It's not like we're ever truly in this way. It's not like we're 100% victimized by life, because we can always choose how we're going to respond to a circumstance, even if we just choose what the circumstance means to us, because we have no physical way of responding. Like we always have that free will and our choice on what to do next, right? It reminds me of Viktor Frankl. Poor guy was in the Auschwitz Nazi concentration camp, right? But he realized, like, I still have freedom to decide what things mean to me. I still have freedom to choose my attitude in this moment, even though you've taken away all my freedoms, right? And he created a very meaningful life out of his experiences in the concentration camp. And he wrote a book all about finding your mission and purpose in life and not being so limited by our outward circumstances on that. So, do you think we have a lot of good ideas on why life should not be easier or different than it is?
I think so. Yeah, we definitely way more expansive.
Perfect. And then after we accept our circumstances, how can we best transition into progressive action? How can we then best transition into progressive action? What are your thoughts?
I would say through practicing it when things are maybe not as difficult, when you're not in as much conflict or chaos, maybe. And continuing, but just more so on like a frequent basis, so that when you're in that situation, it's kind of innate as opposed to.
Yeah. Yeah. And it could just be a matter of asking ourselves questions that bring our focus where it needs to go. Like I could just say, okay, what can we control in this situation?
Right.
Number one, what can we control here? Number
Yeah.
two, what resources do we have? And number three, what can we do in the moment? And then what can we do later on? Boom, we've already thought about progressive action.
Okay.
And if you had to simplify it even more, you could just make it the question, how can we make it better? And leave it at that. Now that I've accepted my circumstances and that all of this serves a purpose, even if I don't understand what it is in the moment because of my limited understanding, I accept that everything happens for a reason. Now, how can I make things better? Done.
Got it.
Any thoughts?
I'm just amazed at like the resistance side of things. Like why there's like why we develop this like resistance. And you were saying it's just basically because we're not like there's a part of us that doesn't believe.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what the resistance is.
Tell me.
Here's some cold, hard truth. I almost want to say the resistance comes from a God complex. It really does. It comes from a lack of faith in the big picture and everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And the frustrations we develop come from our mental judgment that things should be different than what they are because we know better. From our determination that our mental preferences are God, okay? The judge of the universe across all space and time. So it's like we promoted our egotistical preferences to the ultimate position of authority and judgment. But and you know, the best thing for this is, you know, to ask ourselves, do we truly know what is best for us?
Right.
You know, how are my mental preferences overrated? You know, can I see across all space and time? So can I truly know what is best for me to be going through in this moment?
Of course not. No way.
You know, and how many times have my mental preferences been completely wrong? How many times have I done things my way and it ended up making a mess of things in life? I'll go first. I can't even count how many times I've done things my way and been totally humbled by the outcome. To the point where, you know, one of the things I might do is I might just make a shirt one day that says, I don't know what's best for me, and just leave it at that, you know, because that's really a message out there, you know, to lead by example, because I truly don't. You know, it's like so many times I thought something was a good idea and it was a bad idea. And then so many times the opposite was true. I thought something seemed like a bad idea and it ended up working out well. So this is where we can use some humility hygiene and just clean off a little bit of the egotism, thinking we know best, and acknowledge to ourselves that our own best thinking has got us into a lot of these messes in life. And therefore we should not worship our mental preferences as being this judgment from a higher perspective on how life should unfold. It's misleading. You know, we tend to prefer comfort over progress. People always want things to be comfortable and they vilify the discomfortable stuff. Or did I just make up a word? Discomfortable stuff.
It kind of flowed.
Yeah. You know, if everything went our way in life all the time the way we want it, what troubles and difficulties would it bring if everything always went our way, right? So
you're 100% spot on.
I think what we can do as something progressive is practice accepting rather than resisting reality. You know, that one of the biggest problems is that people think they're not supposed to be having these so-called problems. Right? That's one of the biggest problems. But it's like, what are we here for? Are we here to stay the same and stay comfortable and then go from cradle to grave? Or are we here to self-realize and really experience the adventure of who we are and what we're truly capable of as we continue that path of self-improvement and continue that journey towards figuring out how to attain soul happiness, right?
I like the phrase that you usually use in terms of like envisioning yourself, like your life as like a movie, right?
Yes.
that always kind of keeps me grounded, because it's a simple statement, but it's true. Like, we don't buy into the things that are just the same in the movies or the shows that are like consistent with no source of conflict, no villains, no problems.
Yeah, yeah, and that idea comes from Paramahansa Yogananda. And when I read about that idea, I immediately fell in love with it. I'm like, this is such a it's a profound way to have healthy detachment to this reality. And a lot of the times people are just getting so worked up about such little things is because they are treating this reality as the place that they want to lay down their dreams of perfection. And they might be suffering spiritual amnesia and have forgotten that they're going to need to check out of this mortal frame and leave it, just like checking out of a hotel. So it's like, let's not spend all of our time making the hotel room so perfect in every little way and get all worked up about it if you're checking out at the end of the weekend. We can live in the world, do your best, keep one foot in eternity, and, just live with a spiritual consciousness, right? So one of the things we can do here to practice this stuff is we can decide on a surrender experiment. Now, this is where you just kind of like choose an attitude and you're just going to surrender to whatever life sends you and then just make the best of it. Now, rather than resisting and saying, oh, it shouldn't be this way and they shouldn't have done that and that shouldn't have happened and my life should be different than this. Now, here's the thing with a surrender experiment. If it doesn't work out, okay, then you can just go back to the old crappy ways of looking at things. All right. Like it's not a permanent decision. But all this experiment requires is that we adopt certain attitudes. We can learn to do this just like you learn to play a musical instrument, you learn to do your job, you learned how to ride a bicycle. You can learn to do this. We just have to be intentional, And here's kind of the attitudes we need to kind of to surrender. Here's the attitudes to surrender our resistance to life. Like we need to just have the attitude that I can surrender all these self-limiting preferences and fears about life. What good have they really done? It's just tortured me to think this way. I can surrender all these preferences and fears. What good has it really done? It's just tortured me, right? So that's like one thing. Another thing is, I can decide to have the attitude that a loving universe knows exactly what I need and the best and most efficient way to bring it about. A loving universe knows exactly what I need and the best and most efficient way to bring it about. Now, you could sub in a loving universe for creator, higher power, God, or whatever term works for you. But essentially, we want the attitude that whatever is happening is exactly what is needed. And then, appreciate life as it is, asking yourself what's good about it. Learn from it. Ask yourself what can be learned. And find the opportunities to serve a greater good with whatever is going on. Ask yourself, how can I make it better? Right? Because the world is never really going to make us happy. Well, we're so busy on the inside making ourselves unhappy by saying life should be this way, it should be easy. Like these attitudes just make us unhappy over and over and over again. It's that simple. And the solution is just to let all that stuff go. Right? And practice letting it go until it becomes a natural way of living. The mind is going to fight back. It's going to say, I like this, I don't like this, blah, blah, blah. And when our preferences bubble up, just treat it like a life-threatening emergency. Just immediately like, no, we're not going there. All right? And then just remind yourself that whatever is happening is exactly what is needed to happen. Just remind yourself. And if you do that enough, our thoughts and attitudes are there just because of sheer habit. And we can develop, if we really intensely focus on changing our attitudes, then through sheer habit, we can switch our patterns, right?
Yeah.
So do you want to go through like a practical example of how this might look? Maybe discuss one?
Sure.
Okay. So let's go through an example like, let's go through an example like this. Let's say someone goes through a really messy breakup, okay? but they still have to cooperate with their ex on, co-financing and co-parenting and everything else because they've got kids or pets. And the ex keeps sharing a false narrative about you. The ex keeps saying mean things and telling the kids mean things about you that aren't true. Okay. And keeps trying to not let you have any contact with them and not be involved in their life and blah, blah, blah. Imagine that's the situation.
Okay.
I'm trying to pick a situation that seems unjust. This is a good one. It's not nice, So how can we practice radical surrender to what's going on? What kinds of things can we tell ourselves?
Well, the first thing that just came to mind is that a little bit of empathy, I guess, in terms of the person and maybe their sufferings, even though it's a difficult situation, we're never in the shoes of somebody else.
Okay, good. So we could tell ourselves this. This is an opportunity for me to practice and strengthen my empathy skills. Right? It's an opportunity for me to gain the developmental strength, to keep my inner peace.
Right.
This is an opportunity to practice setting healthy boundaries. It's an opportunity to practice a greater understanding in my romantic partner selection process.
True.
Because I was clearly overlooking some really integral factors, such as somebody's moral disposition, and so clearly my skills were not as refined as they could have been. We could say that it's an opportunity to find my gaps in wisdom and then fill them, find my own ignorance that has and take extreme ownership of how I got into this situation, right? Mm-hmm. So we can start by embracing this as a learning curriculum from the universe, right? And it's look, it's going to be painful no matter what. So why don't I just ask, what is life trying to teach me here? Why does it have to get my attention with this? What do I need to learn here? Right? So that might be a way we can look at it. Any other thoughts?
I like the what is life trying to teach me here. I feel like that instantly gets you into a gear of this is a resource and a tool for me to grow.
Yeah. So it's the difference between what is life doing to me to
right.
How is life trying to help me through this experience? How is the universe trying to help me here?
100%.
Just having that attitude, right? And one thing is we don't really know what we don't know. In the unborn state, we might have asked for this situation so that we might have signed up for this, so that we could be in this position to share love with these souls, maybe the kids or pets or whatever's kind of caught in between here, so we can teach them discernment, what is true and what is not true. Just because somebody tells you something doesn't mean it's true. You should verify these things rather than going along with gossip and rumor, to help teach these young souls, what is beneficial to think and what is not beneficial to think. Maybe it's a good idea with the people in your life that you love and care for that you give them benefit of the doubt. And when somebody comes along and spreads a very harsh narrative about them, that you don't just abandon your entire history with that person and jump on board with this narrative, right? Discernment is one of the most valuable skills we can all learn. And that's such a beautiful gift to help somebody to develop their discernment. We can just assume that we asked for this. We asked for all of this. What is happening is exactly what is needed to happen. Just assume we don't know what happened before we showed up in this life with these bodies and these circumstances. We should just assume we asked for this for reasons that we don't remember right now.
Right. True.
But now be on the lookout, because the minute we start doing this, so this is kind of like the process of, okay, well, we're using these attitudes now, that this isn't a problem, it's just an opportunity. and that all these experiences right now in my life are being permitted by a wise and loving universe or creator, and it knows across all space and time what is best for me. Even if it doesn't feel good in the moment, the creator knows the best way to bring these things about. Yeah. Richard Rohr had a quote, and I think it was, "What is okay. What is the greatest teacher." Right? So our greatest teacher is really what's going on in our life. So we might want to just tell ourselves, how is this happening for my benefit? How does this challenge me to be better? How does this give me the opportunity to develop my highest potential? Right? Imagine it's all happening for your best interest to help you grow. Right? So, and just remember that our hardships forge us into a better version of ourselves. And when we're better, life is better. And if we've been tested, it's a gift. How else can we get better? These problems happen for us. We should actually be. I've heard this. It sounds like a crazy attitude, but I've heard that we should actually be really ungrateful for all the unjust, uncomfortable stuff that happens to us in life. Because, it is what helps push us to the next level. So we got to be on the lookout for any phrases that begin with yes, but, and then some sort of an exception to the surrender experiment. Yes, but this is different, okay? Because I did everything nice and good to this person, and this isn't the way human beings are supposed to act to each other, and blah, blah. And yeah, but I'm the one who bought the dog, and so I shouldn't have to split the dog with my ex. Or yes, but I'm actually a better parent than my ex because not only are they a narcissistic gaslighter, but they also can't hold a proper job and they got substance abuse issues and whatever. So we can throw in all these yes buts. That's just the resistance. That's just us playing God complex again and not trusting the process. We will convince ourselves there's an exception. Just this once, just this situation. The key to success is don't get involved in that game of doing yes buts. It's a lose-lose game because once again, we've let the ego, our ego's playing God again, right?
I can't say I haven't used those words. So for sure, I feel like that will be an easy catch. That will be an easy catch.
Be on the lookouts for the yes buts.
Okay.
Yeah, they're coming. It's totally no matter.
It's crazy how impactful your verbiage is in terms of how you think, right? Like we must spit out X amount of words a day, and it just kind of changes our psychology. So I feel like it's a really integral part that you don't hear of too often. I know I don't hear about like watching your vocabulary like to yourself, like self-talk and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a sign of emotional maturity, intellectual maturity. As we grow up on the outside, we should grow up on the inside and not really make messes like a toddler might on the outside. We make toddler style messes on the inside, So I think it's kind of there's a time when we have to kind of grow up in that way and start doing that. I've done enough of the immature stuff. I've probably done more than my fair share, Here's something we should do. Sometimes, one of the things that's hard to accept is when we have difficulty getting through to somebody who is unable to accept things. And they know they're making it worse, but they still stay stuck in their ways. I think we've all met somebody like this. Have you ever met anyone like that?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, I'm going to give you a 4-step process for this. Okay. Here's a really good one. All you could say to them is when they do something that just made things worse, you just get their attention on it. Hey, what did you do? Okay. They might say, oh, well, I was in a bad mood, so I just exploded on the phone to one of our neighbors or relatives or somebody, right? Then you could say, well, how did it turn out? Step 2, help them see the consequences of the actions. How did that turn out? Okay. Help them see the consequences of the actions. Well, it didn't really turn out that good. They kind of hung up on me. They're not returning my calls anymore or whatever. Right?
Do you think that people actually reflect on like the consequence, or do you think that
no, they need help? They need a spotter. This is how you spot them.
Yeah. Okay.
This is how you spot somebody in a low pressure, accepting way.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So out of love and compassion. Love corrects. Okay. So to some degree, you want to, when somebody's doing something, you want to kind of help them correct any and benefit them in their suffering state in which they might be ignorant. So love corrects, but we want to do it in a way that's like low pressure, low judgment. Hey, what did you do? How did it turn out? Number 3, this is a big one. Okay. You say this, no biggie. I've done way worse than that. And then you give an example from your life when you did something way worse than that. I remember one time, oh my gosh, in grade school, I got mad at my friend and I yelled at them by the coat rack and blah, blah, blah. And it was even worse because you were on the phone. This was in front of a big group of people. And she didn't talk to me for like a month. And it was the worst thing ever. And it took years before we, reconnected and whatever. Right. And it was about the dumbest thing ever. Like she took my hanger and I was, like very territorial on what my coat hanger was. Anyway, the whole thing is the best thing to do here, throw your ego out and just throw it out and just be like, no worries, I've done worse than that. It also like just reminds people that we're all part of this human experience, fumbling and everything else. And it gets rid of any kind of coming at it from a place of being higher and mightier. It's like, no worries, I've done worse than this. Number 4. Okay. So number 1, what did you do? Number 2, how did it turn out? Number 3, no biggie. I've done way worse than that. Okay. No, and if it was like something really bad and you haven't done worse, I could say, no biggie. I've thought about doing way worse than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes I've had these thoughts. I haven't followed through on it, but I've had thoughts about doing even worse than what you did. So no worries. Okay. Then you could just say number 4. So what do you think you'll try next time? Get them thinking about alternatives. You don't have to say, do this next time.
Right.
Let them try another method and let them fail. And then let them try another failure method. You know why? Failure is a better teacher than success. It's more memorable because it's more painful. So eventually you learn all the wrong ways of doing something through failure and pain. Then when you learn the right way, you are really committed to it.
You're sticking. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, it's okay. You can try as many wrong ways as you want. Eventually, you'll never be satisfied with the wrong way. So, just being like cool, like remember how long it took a lot of us to change our point of view on things. Just being patient with other people when they change their point of view. Now, little asterisk beside this, if somebody has some sort of a harmful behavior, okay, it's harmful, it's damaging because they're physically, abusive, or they're emotionally abusive, or they're trying to tarnish your character and character slander and ruin your reputation, whatever. Keep a healthy distance. Keep a healthy distance during this time. Use minimal necessary force to prevent future harm, right? So there's always like trying to help somebody, keep a safe distance, right? But here's like a very low pressure way to do it. So at this point, we kind of talked about why it's a good idea to accept life as it is, why it's a bad idea to have the attitude that it should be easier or different than it is. The main thing to walk away from is maybe like just one little attitude to try, maybe one little one-liner or wisdom nugget or phrase or statement from our entire conversation that you want to just drill in and memorize. Is there any that kind of stick out for you that you kind of liked?
I like analogies. So I think I'm going to go with like the movie analogy where no one likes a movie without problems.
Yeah. You could also, perfect. That's great. That's great. Other little one-liners you could say is, There are no problems, just opportunities.
Right.
Right. Another one, I've heard a lot of people say this one was, life is happening for you, not to you. Right. So we could just imagine, that whatever's happening is exactly what is needed. And we could get curious about why this is needed. So, or that everything that's happening us in life is permitted by a wise and loving creator. What's that?
I was going to say, yeah, that is one, like, I can't see across all space and time. So how could I know better, or even just having faith in that regard.
Yeah. Or I don't really know what's good for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's so freeing to say that. I don't really know what's good for me. I've been so wrong on what's good for me. So I'm just going to embrace this. This might be the best thing ever for me, even though it feels like the worst thing ever. So here's the thing. Setbacks and surprises happen in life, but we can still appreciate, we can still learn, and we can still serve. Okay? So we aren't trained to think this way. We have to train ourselves. But if you want all the benefits of inner peace and radical acceptance, then we have to do the work to develop the skill. And this usually requires that we memorize some of these rules we can live by. Maybe repeat them a couple times a day. Determine the insights we need to internalize, and then just get them to stick. And then just be an observer of your life. And just observe how you do and, see what happened, and then decide if you want to try something else next time. I think the rewards of this work are worth a lifetime of effort. No matter what happens, just remind yourself these things happen. But that's a good thing, like
100%. No, you're right, for sure.
All right. Any final thoughts, key takeaways?
I honestly just feel like it would be really helpful to just kind of take those one-liners and even set a reminder on your phone, like just to go at like certain points of the day, as like a daily thing.
Yeah. This is the work that really counts, right? It's like we really have to take ownership over who we are and how we show up in the world. And one thing is having the discernment on which attitudes might not be fair, might not be realistic, and might not be serving us, and to do the work to change those attitudes. And one of those attitudes is a resistance to life as it is, which comes from a place of presumed judgment across, like presumed knowledge across all space and time. So we don't want to judge the moment.
Okay. Good stuff.
Great work out there today.
Thanks. You too. Go team.
Absolutely. And, appreciate you participating and sharing this chat. For anyone online who we might be able to help out, who may watch this recording in future. We do these recordings as a gesture of love and caring for strangers, because on some level we feel like we're all friends in spirit, and hopefully in some way our experiences benefit you as others have helped us out. We're just passing on through gratitude. Okay, let's do go team on 3. Fist bump, we're out. You ready? All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, go team.
Go team. Thanks, Brendan.
Take care.